Hello everyone, Josh first back again with some more Epic 7. Today we're starting a new series called the Versus Battle. So basically we're going to be taking two very likewise characters. It doesn't matter if they're a 3, 4, or a 5-star character. And we're going to be competing against another character, kind of the same variety, well, close enough anyway, and see which character is actually the superior character for overall usage in the game. Now, we're going to be using epic7x.com, so thanks so much for that website. I've talked about this website before on the channel, so if you have not checked it out, definitely go check out epic7x.com right now. But anyways, so we're going to be using this site so we can go ahead and look at Krau and our competitor, Tywin. So it's going to be a nice little competition between the two 5-star ice tanks that I know a lot of you have probably used. And I know a lot of people are always like, man, Krau is just so good, and Tywin really wasn't giving much love. Of course, he just got buffed recently, but before the buff, I still felt that Tywin was being very undervalued. But here we are nonetheless. So anyways, Krau versus Tywin, our first ever verse series video. So if you guys want any more verse videos in the future, definitely let me know in the comment section below. Definitely give me some suggestions on what two characters that you want to see compete in a versus battle video, and I'll be glad to read them, and hopefully we get some of them here on the channel. So anyways, so if you guys want to see some more of that, you know what to do. But anyways, let's jump right into it. So we got Krau here. Of course, he's nice, natural 5-star. We're going to be completely disregarding Epic7X's subjective opinions when it comes to the ratings, to the pros and cons. We're going to be completely ignoring all that because I'm giving you guys my personal feedback on all this during these verse battles, just so you guys know. All right. So, Krau's 3 skills are Sword Storm, which is his S1, S2 being Charge, and his S3 being Summon, Siegfried, 6-turn cooldown, 4-turn cooldown, and then, of course, S1s do not have cooldowns. So, we have attack an enemy with a Sword Storm with 50% chance to provoke for 1 turn. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max HP. So, obviously, you want to try and get Krau's HP as high as possible because a lot of his skills are kind of reliant on that, especially with his S3, the way it's designed. You want to have as much HP as possible to stall out as long as possible to be able to make perfect use of that S3. And then Charge actually goes by defense, which defense is not a problem with Krau because Krau has one of the higher, I believe maybe the highest, correct me if I'm wrong in the comment section below, base defense in the game. It's very up there. I don't know if it's the highest, but it's definitely got to be like one of the top 5 for sure. I think it is the highest though, but I could be mistaken. Anyways, let's go ahead and look at the enhancements. When you do go ahead and throw some skills at these skills, that sounded so weird. So again, we're still talking about the S1 here. So he has that 50% chance to provoke for 1 turn. Now, provoke, let's talk about that for a moment. Provoke is very powerful within PvP, and I'm sure a lot of you know that if you used to play the pre-nerfed version of Falcon and Flurry. You know, provoke is absolutely disgusting in PvP. So Krau being able to make use of that on his S1 is pretty powerful. Now, you can get the damage up. The effect percentage can go up 15, 25%. So it can actually go up to a 75% chance to provoke for his S1, which is very, very powerful, especially if he's going against the type disadvantage, such as fire units. Provoking a unit such as like a Chiron can be very devastating. If you can take a Chiron out with a provoke, they're not going to be able to revive and come back. So something like that is very powerful. We're being able to provoke a Sirmia. You're going to be forcing them to use their S1 with, you know, on a Krau, and that's not going to be very effective, obviously. But getting that provoke off on even, you know, the neutral typings, such as like a Luna, for example, is also very powerful. Getting a provoke off on an Angelica, forcing her to not be able to heal, is very powerful. So you guys get the point. Provoke is very, very strong. Okay, so his S1 is very ideal for PvP. But in PvE, not so much. Bosses can't be provoked, so his S1 is really reliant on PvP for the most part. Now, you can provoke minions, but we're kind of disregarding minions in terms of who's better because, honestly, you could say a lot of things that units are good against minions. So we're strictly trying to keep PvE more boss-oriented in these verse videos, so keep that in mind as well. But yes, his S1 for PvP and Guild Wars, very, very good. Very good, especially for PvP defense for, of course, Guild Wars and regular PvP. All right. Now, his S2, Charge. It's a 4-turn cooldown, which can get down to 3 with +4 skill enhancement. Shoves the enemy with a shield, decreasing combat readiness by 35%. before granting increased defense to all allies for 2 turns. Now, that's pretty big, so I believe that's 60%. I think it's 60% defense, all allies. Very, very powerful. It used to be 75%, but they nerfed it, and then they nerfed Elson. Rip Elson. You didn't even last that long, my boy, but you will be missed. And damage don't increase proportional to the caster's defense. So very, very, very flexible S2. It's not a bad S2 at all. That combat readiness push is very, very good because you always, I mean, you definitely always want to have at least maybe one combat readiness pusher, be it pushing them back or pushing your team up, or maybe doing both, such as like an S Rose. You know, Shadow Rose's S3 is kind of disgusting for doing things like that. So combat readiness is very, very powerful within this game. I would say next to combat readiness, probably speed would be the next most powerful thing, especially when you're talking about PvP. And Krau is definitely designed with PvP in mind. So that combat readiness push, well, I should say push back on the enemy is actually very, very powerful. You could target an enemy that has a lot of high DPS. They're going to be attacking next, so you can do that, push them back kind of out of reach, and then you could try and take that character out with one of your own DPSs. So it's a very good strategy, very good tactic, very good on defense as well. PvP, if you know your AI is controlling your team, you know, very, very good, very PvP oriented. Now, what's very interesting about his S2 though is that combat readiness push can also be very, very good and crucial even against some bosses. Now, not all bosses will this work against, but a good chunk of them will. So very, very good, especially against a Wyvern and Wyvern 11. That is a very good skill to have on his S2. The defense up for all characters, your whole party for 2 turns, is also very good in PvE and PvP. So his S2 is definitely a lot better than his S1 when it comes to actual overall content of the game, because it'll work for both. So very, 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 very strong. Of course, you can get that combat readiness push even higher if you give him up to +5 skill investment, because that'll be an additional 15%, which will make that 50% combat readiness, which is quite huge. Being able to push a boss back that much, or a minion back, or an elite back, or players in PvP, especially their DPSs or even their healers. Very, very good S2. It's probably one of my more favorite S2s in the game, just because of how much it can, you know, it can kind of control the outcome of the game for only really a 3-turn cooldown. Not too bad, especially on a tank. All right, so Summon Siegfried, of course. This is what they used to call the boss killer skill for Krau. And it also has a burn effect, which allows you to grant an extra turn. So, of course, offensively, you can use that. It won't be too good in auto because, you know, you can't use burn effects in auto. And, of course, defensive teams won't use that either, obviously, because the AI is playing. But it's a very interesting skill. I feel like this skill it's good and bad. It's kind of like a double-edged sword because you got to kind of play on the edge. So you definitely need a team around your Krau to be able to come back from this possibly, because they could potentially just wipe you out. If you get too low, there's a chance you could get knocked out before it's your turn. So you might want to run kind of a somewhat semi-fast Krau to kind of avoid that happening, because you can find yourself in a situation where you get double DPS and you're dead. So you don't even get to use that that skill, because the way the skill works is you have to lose as much HP as possible, and then you use his skill, and he does that much more damage. Now, the thing is, he cannot do a critical hit, which kind of takes away the critical hit damage and critical hit chance on his stats, which kind of makes him a little bit more tricky to build gear-wise, because his S3 cannot make use of that at all. So you have to pretty much just build him a lot of HP and defense and hope for the best. Hope that you can stall out and that you have like the proper team comp around him, such as healers and stuff, that'll be able to allow him to benefit from that S3, even if he can only do it once. Now, it is a very high cooldown. It is 6, but it can go down to 5 with skill ups, of course. Again, if you are playing offensively with him, you can do that burn effect, which allows him to attack again, which could be nice, because then you can go from his S3 into his S2. So that's really good, because then if he has low HP, you can then use his S2 to kind of raise up his defense significantly and push back an enemy that may be on the verge of being able to kill your Krau, allowing your other team to kind of heal him back up or whatever, or work around him, you know, et cetera, making him a little bit more reliable with his S3 in that regard if you're playing him offensively in PvP. Now, that skill is very good against certain bosses. Again, we're bringing up Wyvern 11. Very, very powerful skill to use. Indeed, like you could do a pretty significant chunk of damage to the Wyvern. So it's not bad. And he grants himself a barrier for 2 turns, which kind of gives him a little bit more survivability as well. But I feel like he was in a little bit of trouble when Kisei first came out, but I feel like Kisei is not being used nearly as much anymore, especially with now Surmia being out, because Surmia and Luna are definitely like putting in the work for DPSs for a lot of teams in this game right now. I'm seeing Luna and Surmia all over the place. Like they're just spammed everywhere right now because they're very powerful DPSers. Now, he does penetrate defense, which is nice. It kind of helps to compensate for losing that, being able to basically not being able to use a critical hit. So, I mean, his S3 overall is just very, very good. It's just a very low cooldown. It has very steep requirements to pull off to its, maximal potential. So, some of those variables could cause an issue. But if you do pull it off, he does have that sustainability thanks to his barriers, depending what type of team comp you have. And if you burn, you can go into his S2, which will raise his defense and everybody else. So, I mean, he just adds that survivability to your team if you can pull it off. So overall, a very, very good unit. But granted, he is more PvP oriented than he is PvE. Now, he can still hang in PvE. Don't get me wrong. PvE is still there. He's still strong in that regard. His S1 will probably be his weak point in PvE, especially against boss fights. But his S2 and S3 definitely kind of somewhat make up for it. So definitely not bad at all. And like I said, his S2 is only 3-turn cooldown with skill up. So very, very good. And his S2 is probably, in my opinion, his best skill because it's what really makes him very versatile for PvP and PvE in a way. But yes, he's definitely more oriented for, designed for rather PvP, even though he can do both. So that's his skills for Krau. These are just their recommended sets. Like I said, we're not going to really talk about anything that they are recommending because this is kind of like what I'm trying to put together for you guys here. So we're not going to, go over any of that. We do have the new artifact, Sword of Azera, that hopefully a lot of you have farmed up by now, at least a few copies. That'll make him very good in PvE for boss fights and against elites. So that'll help him, that kind of added value to both him and Tywin. So I can't really say that that's going to really improve either's odds of winning this verse battle. But Sword of Azera definitely upped the PvE element for both of them. Like, it raised both of them's value even more so than it was before. Because being able to reduce a boss or elite's damage by 30%, like, unrestricted, always, is pretty damn amazing. Like, that artifact is probably one of the better artifacts in the game. And it's free. I mean, granted, you're going to have to spend a lot of stamina, but, you don't have to try and pray to the RNG gods to try and pull it when you can just keep farming it up, and hopefully you guys can get at least a few copies, at least get that one free copy at the very least. So very, very good there. Here's some of the stats here if you guys want to see some of the stats. So basically, let's just go with the max stats. If you take Krau up to 6-star Awaken, level 60, he's going to have 17,231 CP. He's going to be able to hit 839 attack, 6405 HP, and 752 defense. Very, very high defense. So his base stats are phenomenal. And, of course, his imprint gives you HP percentage, which is also very, very good. That'll help your whole team and adds more survivability. Granted, you're going to have to pull multiple dupes of Krau or, get the free imprint from Arena whenever they add that back, hopefully, once Season 2 rewards get here. So, not too bad overall. So, that's just kind of, some of the stuff there for Krau. So, overall, Krau was definitely an amazing unit. Now, let's talk about Tywin. Now, Tywin was very underrated for a long time. Granted, he just got a buff, and a lot of people are loving that new buff. But he was really good before the buff. A lot of people just saw Krau and heard about Krau, and the word of Krau just spread, and everybody just thought Tywin was just garbage. Don't use him because Krau is just superior. That is so far from the truth. It's not even funny. But now that Tywin does have a buff, I think a lot of people are really starting to see how well Tywin shines. But we don't have a winner yet. We still got to talk about Tywin. So let's keep going. Again, we're going to disregard pros and cons and all that stuff right now. All right, so Tywin skills. Let's go in and just open up all these enhancements. Okay, so Tywin has Sword Storm as his S1, Commanding Shout as his S2, and All-Out Attack as his S3. His S1 attacks with a Sword Storm with a 50% chance to dispel one buff. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max HP. His S2, a 4-turn, which you can take down to a 3-turn cooldown, grants increased attack, which is 50%, to himself and I believe one other ally. Usually, if you do it on auto, it usually aims for your highest DPS, but if you're doing it on manual, obviously you're going to select it. It also raises critical hit chance, which is also 50%, and that's for 2 turns, and increases combat readiness by 30%. So his S2 is pretty damn amazing, just like Kraze. The thing, though, I like about his S2 is I feel like his I feel like his S2 is even more versatile than Kraze S2. Kraze S2 allows him to be very good in PvE and PvP, but so does Tywin's. The problem here is Tywin's S1 is better fit for all forms of content instead of just PvP. That 50% chance to dispel is really good, which goes up to 75% chance, obviously. So you have that. I mean, dispel over provoke. Provoke obviously going to be better in PvP. Well, actually, I guess that could be per perspective, per matchup, honestly. The dispel might sometimes be better. But that dispel is very powerful because you can use that even in PvE quite a bit, even on bosses, some bosses, and the elites as well. So that S1 is actually going to be versatile in every form of content in this game. And his S2, much like Kraze, is very good for PvP and PvE as well. That given that combat readiness push is huge. Like Krau pushes back, Tywin pushes up, I guess, if you want to put it that way. But he also gives you that offensive approach. He allows you to be a little bit more offensive while still remaining his tankiness, which is very, very good for PvP, especially giving himself and another unit increased attack of 50% and critical hit chance of 50%. That allows you to focus on other skill sets, gear-wise, rather, for your characters. That makes him very good to be paired up with a character such as, like, C. Dominil, because then he can give C. Dominil that 50% critical hit, allowing you to only make her 50%, allowing you to boost up her critical hit damage and attack as high as you possibly can and not have to focus on the critical hit chance. That'll help a unit like her. That'll help a unit, DPSer like Luna, which gives herself that critical hit chance and attack percentage with her own passive. So that 50% critical hit chance boost and attack boost is going to help her. It's going to help Asurmia. Really, any kind of DPS that you really want to focus more on the attack potency and less on the critical hit chance, Tywin is your guy. Now, C. Dominil can also give herself that with her S3 and some of your other units, but if you do it on off rotations, you can always keep your C. Dominil being around 100% critical hit chance, which is absolutely amazing. So, I mean, he has that team versatility to allow you to actually invest less in certain stats on other characters and more on others. So he basically just makes your team a powerhouse for all content. All content. PvP, Guild Wars, you name it. Raid, Abyss, boss hunts, it doesn't matter. That S2 is amazing. Now, his S3 is a 5-turn cooldown, which, of course, you can get down to a 4-turn. Now, I will say his S3 is pretty expensive skill-wise because that's where most of his skills are actually going. But that's not always a bad thing. So, if you burn effect, he grants an extra turn, similar to Kraze. His cooldown is 1 less than what Kraze is, though. And it's not as situational. It's actually not situational at all. It really doesn't really have a restriction like Kraze. Kraze, you have to get a certain, low on HP to be able to do the, maximum potential. While with Tywin, you don't. You just use the skill and you're set. Attacks all enemies, again, after a sword storm with a 75% chance to decrease defense for 2 turns and increase defense of the caster for 3 turns. Now, that goes up to 100% now with skill ups after the buff, which is amazing. He's basically an AoE defense break, kind of like Bellona, which is insane. Of course, he's not going to do it as fast as Bellona because Bellona can proc her S3 off her S1, which still makes her still the best AoE defense breaker in the game. But I would say Tywin is probably second now in that regard. You also have maybe Tenebria as well, very good AoE defense breaker. And Moonlight can, but they can't get to 100%, I don't think. I think they can only get to 75%. I could be wrong there with Tenebria, but I know Moonlight can only go to 75. But still, very powerful in his S3. He also increases his own defense for 3 turns. Now, keep that in mind because Kraze S2 raises everyone's defense for 2 turns, while Tywin raises his own for 3 turns. So he gets an additional turn, but it's only for himself. But that's not necessarily a bad thing either. It depends what kind of team comp you're running and what kind of event you're doing. If you're doing, let's say, Wyvern 11, Tywin's defense up for himself is a lot more important than Krau's defense up for the whole team. But if you're talking PvP, then it's slightly different. But it makes him even more powerful, though, on PvP defense because his survivability is even bigger because of that 3 turns and the fact that he can AoE defense break, which allows your other DPSers to do more damage. So like I said, Tywin is allowing your team to be more offensive, much more offensive, with less restrictions and lower cooldowns, especially when his S3. And his S1, like I said, is more versatile in all content. His S2, I would say his S2 is kind of on par with Kraze for what they can do both offensively and kind of in a way defensively, I guess you could say. One's more offense, one more defense, but they both work around the same. Very interesting. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max HP, so you just got to build Tywin with a lot of HP, obviously, because both his S1 and S3 go off of that. The thing is, though, Tywin can make use of critical hit damage and critical hit chance. Unlike Kraze S3, that kind of just says no to crits. But again, you get compensated slightly with the fact that he does get penetration, but it still does make it feel like a lot of wasted stats if you're building gear that has critical hit damage and critical hit chance. So you got to be very, very picky on your gear for Krau over how you build Tywin, because Tywin can make use of a lot more stats, if that makes sense. But anyway, so overall, I think Tywin is built more for that offensive potency. Just makes your whole team hit harder, makes your whole team, just more aggressive, more aggro. He's definitely built for an aggro team, so he's really strong on PvP offense, but he also has that versatility to be strong on PvP defense as well, because of the fact that he gives himself that defense up for 3 turns, plus it's only a 4-turn cooldown, and it AoE defense breaks, which is insane. That alone is just very, very important. You Bologna uners, uners, that ain't even a word. We're making up words here. Get out your Josh First dictionaries, guys. Write that down. But so basically, Tywin's S3 is allowing for you to basically have yourself like a mini Bologna, which is insane. Imagine her and him together. Double AoE defense breaks, and then one big DPS and a healer. Oh my goodness. Plus him providing that attack up for one of your units, so he also works as a really good buffer. So he's a debuffer and a buffer, and that 50% chance to 75% chance to dispel one buff with his S1 is pretty insane as well. Very close. You can take away some of those annoying buffs that you have to deal with in certain content for both PvE and PvP. So just overall, he's very well-rounded and more versatile on everything in the game. Like, he's good. He's a good fit everywhere. I'd say the only place he's probably not a good fit possibly would be like, Golem 11. Like, that's really the only thing I could see. Him and Krau both probably would not be a good spot there. You could probably use them there if you have to, but I don't think that's definitely not where they would call home. So, and again, he could still make use of that Sword of Isaiah as well. The new artifact that we talked about earlier in the video. Very powerful. Now, let's look at base stats here. So, at 6-star, Awaken level 60, he has a slightly less CP than Krau. He's at 16,849 because he has a little bit less attack, and he has about, almost 100 less defense. But he does get about 300 more HP, which is 6,751, which means that you could build him up, you could build his HP up a lot higher than Krau's, which is not a bad thing either. Like I said, one, you could build up with very high defense, one, you could build up with very high HP. So stat-wise, they're pretty similar. Not too far away either way. Now, I think Krau only has like 100 base speed max. Let me double check that again. Let me go down to speed here. I went too far. Yeah, so he's only got 100 speed, while Tywin can actually hit up to 106 speed. So you can actually build Tywin a lot faster. I mean, it is only 6 speed, but 6 speed in this game, especially if you're talking PvP, is huge. Just 1 speed difference from your opponent can mean victory or defeat. Ask a lot of players that are running Shadow Rose, and they run into a Shadow Rose that's just slightly faster than their team, and they just get completely bodied. So that speed is very crucial if you're wanting to run a unit in PvP. So that additional 6 speed and more HP could be more beneficial, you could argue, than Krau with the higher defense. But that's up to debate. I'll let you guys duke that out in the comment section below. And just like Krau, he does get up to an HP 12% on his devotion. So both of them are equal footing on that. So that leaves us with the final conclusion. Who is better, Tywin or Krau? So, my opinion on the matter in the versus battle, we went through most of the criteria already throughout the video of kind of how I'm judging these characters. So, my verdict may surprise some of you, may anger some of you, but I'm being completely unbiased. I've used both characters. I enjoy both characters. I love Krau. I love Tywin. You cannot go wrong with either choice. If anybody asks you if one is better than the other, you could either have them watch this video, or maybe you can give them your own personal opinion and let them kind of take that and kind of establish their own feelings towards it. But I would say personally that Tywin is superior to Krau. I even said that before the buff. A lot of you who know me, you've been watching the channel for a while, you've seen me in the Discord, you've gotten to some of our live chats. You'll know what choice I was already going to make before the video, when you saw the title of the video. But I will say this, for you Krau fans out there, he's amazing. I love Krau. He's fantastic. He's awesome. If you've already built him up, you did not make a mistake. He's awesome. Very, very good unit. Very good. However, if you have a Tywin and a Krau sitting in your box, neither have been invested into yet, go with Tywin. Tywin is just more versatile across the board, especially with his recent buff. He can AoE defense break, which is very powerful in any form of the game. He can give you that more offensive aggro strategy, and if you're running a strong DPS in your team already, it's a very good. Having buffs, having that combat readiness push, you know, Krau has his own as well. It's just, in a way, he makes your team feel a lot more faster because you're killing things a lot sooner, a lot quicker. And in things like PvP, that's very crucial. He has the higher speed, so it allows him to build up more speed, which, you know, is also very crucial in PvP. And PvE as well, being able to have those low cooldowns, non-restrictions on his S3, it's just so clutch. I don't really know what more to say between the two. They're both exceptional. This was a very close fight. I will say Krau just kind of slightly missed the mark. Tywin just feels a little bit more versatile. He's just better overall for me. But like I said, both are exceptional. You guys can let me know what you guys think. Who is your winner in the comment section below? And if you have any suggestions for any future fights, verse battles, let me know in the comment section below. Glad to read those. And don't forget to join us in the Discord so you can keep the conversations going before and after the videos, as always. And I love making these discussion videos for you guys. I think these are a lot of fun. The comments get really creative. I like some of you, especially the ones that are like some of the people that hate on what I say. They come up with some of the weirdest and funniest things to say, and I love reading them. I don't take no hate from the comment section, guys. I enjoy reading all messages, no matter what it is. They're always enjoyable to me. But anyways, like the video if you did. As always, subscribe if you're new here to the channel, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Sorry for the long video, by the way, but I just wanted to kind of cover all the bases that I thought I needed to. Hopefully I didn't miss anything. But until next time, as always, having a great day wherever you are. Until then, peace.